Good morning, everyone. I see you all trickling in. It's great to see so many of you. Hello, Darren. Hello, Jeffrey Powell. Hi, Marcello. I've seen you a lot today. That's great. Hi, Lightspire. Good morning, everybody. Hi, Neil. Hi to Jeffrey Powell. I think you're in Miami. Is that right? Or are you in Minneapolis? It's great to see you all. We are going to be starting just momentarily. I know that the last session just wrapped a few minutes ago, so probably some of you are getting your next cup of coffee. So we're going to be starting in just a minute. Hi, Atul. Oh, Jeffrey, you're in Brooklyn. That's right. Hi, Charlie. Good morning, Marcello. Good morning, Ronald Davis. Nice to see you here. Hi, Soren. Wherever you're calling in from. Hi, Amit. Thank you, Atul. Thank you, Lightspire, for my compliments, everybody. We're on our final day, so I've had some practice now with all of you. We're just gonna wait another 30 seconds or so and we'll get started. Hi, Adam. Hello, Charlie. Nice to see you. Hi, Gary. Perhaps I should sing a song. Maybe that'll be in a different panel. That'll be the after show. Hi, Jim Schofer. It's nice to see you. You're calling from New York. Hi, Brandon. Good to see you. Hi, Ronald Davis. Okay, I think that we are all slowly here. Hi, Travis. Welcome. Take it away, Jeff.
Hello, everybody, and welcome. Good morning from California. I call it our third world state since they've announced a power shutoff coming soon, but hopefully not during the middle of all of this. Our topic today is going to be chronographs, and there is a part of me that would like to have Aretha Franklin singing right now, singing Respect, including all the Sakatumis, because chronographs could be seen as one of the most difficult kinds of movements to construct. We take them for granted, but they need a lot of respect. And they need respect because chronographs bring along dynamic changes to the running of the watch and to the movement, which is very, very difficult for a watch constructor, that's what they call movement designers, to create. We have three distinguished panelists today who are going to talk about chronographs, and we have chronographs of different designs that are going to be featured today. From the area of Lausanne, we have Marc Juneau, who is the Vice President of Sales of Blancpain. Marc is a trained watchmaker who worked for many years as a watchmaker, and he has been working with Blancpain since 1995 and been Vice President of Sales since 2017. With us from Geneva is Infante from Chopard. Poe is in charge of men's watches, although he worked in the UK, so he uses the word gents watches for Chopard. And from near Dresden, we have Tony de Haas. Tony is the head of product development of Lange. He's been at Lange since 2004. His career before that included working on grand complications and sonories at Renault and Papy, and he began his career in The Hague doing after-sales service. So we have three very knowledgeable people in the industry to present chronographs, and we're going to begin this morning with Marc Juneau in Lausanne. Marc?
Very well. Hello, everybody. I'm delighted to join this panel. And as you said, Jeffrey, the chronograph is a very demanding mechanism, not an easy one to design, create. And, we glad to report that at Blancpain, it's been part of the line. Can you hear me? Seems to be a little problem there.
Yes, we can hear you, Marc.
Sounds fine.
There was some waves. Okay, now so for Blancpain, it all started for the new version Chronograph in 1985. I think there's a very strong person who worked at Blancpain for many, many years, and that is Edmond Capt. Edmond Capt is the father of the Valjoux 7750, and then joined, Frédéric Piguet Blancpain, and also is the father of the 1185, which is basically to be seen as the first reliable, sturdy, vertical clutch chronograph, which was arrived in the manual version at first, and then made into automatic, and of course as a flyback that we keep exclusively for Blancpain, because this movement has been commercialized very well. So between the Valjoux and the Blancpain, 1185 and the new mechanism, we are very well in place with, in the world of chronograph. So the approach is the same as for the rest of the brand. Blancpain, 100% of the Blancpain watches have a Blancpain movement inside that has been designed, and manufactured in-house. Here you have the slide of the vertical chronograph. Cotton wheel chronograph vertical is a fantastic mechanism that has a start and go without any shaking, because teeth are not involved in it. It is basically two flat surfaces getting into a contact. So it's good for this. It's reliable, and also you can have your chronograph mechanism working at all time, because you don't have any wearing of the gear of the teeth. So that's been a very good thing. So vertical chronograph. Now you can see here the evolution from the 1185 mechanism that was a 3 hertz. Accuracy of 1/6 of a second, 40-hour power reserve, and this movement basically became unprotected by this patent, and then the industry, one brand started 20 years later to just copy the mechanism from scratch. Absolutely the same mechanism. So we decided to, since we have the know-how, we have the heritage, we decided to take it to a different level. So we revisited this vertical clutch chronograph, but improved it with the technology available now. So you have escapement, which is in silicium, and make it very reliable. The bridge is a double bridge, the coque, as we call it in French, so a very sturdy mechanism, and has been extremely well received, and it's really took it to a next level of chronograph, within Blancpain, the Blancpain family. So you have here a picture of the split version of the chronograph, because if it is true that the chronograph is nearly as demanding as maybe a minute repeater to design and to make function well, a split chronograph takes it even further, because the axle of the chronograph for the second hand actually becomes a tube that must receive another axle inside. So makes it very, very challenging, and again, very difficult. And as part to Edmond Capt, historically, he's retired, but he has received the Gold Award of the Swiss Chronometry Bureau. So very well, and then respected for his approach, and for his creation and contribution to the world of chronograph and mechanism as a whole. Okay. So maybe here we're going to show you some pictures of this later chronograph, the F385, F being a flyback, as we use it in our classical, and as on the right, with the Côte de Genève, you can see that's what you use in our Violet collection. And on the left, with the colimaçon, the Soleil, the spiral finish, that is the design we use for our sport version in the Bathyscaphe collection.
Marc,
So,
one detail to point out, which would be nice to feature, would be the way in which the watch is regulated now in the new version of the chronograph.
What do you mean by regulated? As far as
the inertial regulation for the balance wheel.
I don't understand the question. I'm sorry. I mean, you mean that is a hairspring in silicium, or?
No. In the older version, back in the days of the 1185, you had a racket regulation for adjusting the watch, and now it's inertial regulation with screws that therefore are very robust, and the regulation is much more resistant to shocks.
Right, I should have mentioned that, absolutely. It's a very sturdy, not only a nicely designed, but a sturdy mechanism. And again, using all the, featuring all the latest technology that we have in the watch industry and that we have, within Swatch Group, of course, for the silicium. Absolutely. So you can see here the balance wheel, with the screw on the balance, it's an improvement, definitely, a hairspring in silicium. And you see here, what I want to show you is featuring the latest chronograph that appeared in the Blancpain house, is the Air Command that came out last year, very well received. It's a piece that originated in the 50s. Marc has one on his wrist, and I always love that piece. And we decided to actually relaunch this watch. So it's a 500 pieces, limited edition, featuring our latest version of the chronograph, fantastically well received. A stainless steel case, so you can see that ceramic bezel with liquid metal marking, so very readable, and really a total replica of the original piece. You can see here that you have on the right the original watch from the 50s, and on the left the version that came out in 2019. So it's a little bit of the evolution of the technology and the design, and of course Blancpain has a very strong and rich heritage. So we always look into the back, for the back, like for the 50 fathom, for the diving watches. The Air Command has been very, very well received in the sports collection.
Marc, there's one
Yes.
other detail which is very subtle, but if a person has an aviation background, would be appreciated, and that is that the bezel is of a type called a countdown bezel.
Right.
Which is different than the one you would use in a diving watch, which I guess you would call a count up bezel.
Correct.
Can you explain that?
Well, I mean, you are the pilot, so maybe you're the better person to actually even do it.
So in a diving watch, the way in which you use the bezel to time is that you set the index next to the minute hand. Right. And then you can read the amount of time you've been underwater right on the bezel. For a pilot, what matters is just the opposite of what matters for a diver. For a pilot, you want to know how much longer till you get to your next, what they call a fix or destination. And so you put in your estimated time next to the minute hand. And then when the minute hand reaches the index, that's when you're supposed to have arrived at that fix or your destination. It's all about running out of fuel, as well as tracking your progress along a planned flight course. So it's very subtle, but you would be surprised how few pilot watches understand this long aviation tradition of a countdown bezel.
All right, so effectively it's a reversed marking on the bezel, right?
Exactly.
Okay. David? Okay. And then now we want to just show you a piece that came out this year, which is the bathyscaphe green version. It's a black ceramic case, and we visited the green color this year, done very well. As you know, we had the limited edition 3 hands bathyscaphe for WatchTime earlier this year, and just decided to actually include that in the chronograph version of this piece. So again, you can see very easy readable dial, fantastic ceramic bezel with again liquid marking, and you can see here the mechanism. So extremely well received, and the chronograph has really, the bathyscaphe chronograph has really increased our sales in chronograph that had come down a little bit since we stopped the flyback a few years ago. So it's we welcome the strong use of this of this new mechanism.
Marc, could you just for some people who may not be totally chronograph aficionados, explain what a flyback is?
Well, a flyback is going to be basically the mechanism that was created to simplify the use of the chronograph to a pilot, and that instead of having to use to start the chronograph at 2 o'clock, stop it at 2 o'clock, and then do a return at the pusher at 4 o'clock. You can actually just push the pusher to start the chronograph, and then you can push the pusher at 4 o'clock, and actually the hands will fly back to 0. And it simplified the use for the pilots who, when you think of it back then, and we're talking about maybe Second World War era, they didn't have much technology in the cockpit. So to have a simple chronograph and reliable chronograph to use was a very good feature. I guess you can see other different creation of chronograph at a time, for that matter, for that reason.
Right. Speaking as a pilot, where it really matters is that you're constantly doing timing events. You do a timing event to one spot, then you start another timing event to the next spot. And so it's one button push instead of 3. So as a pilot, I appreciate it a lot.
Okay, well, there you go. All right. Okay, so I guess another slide, or we are fine. Okay, so that was a short presentation for Blancpain, where we stand today, as far as chronographs are concerned. So we're in a good place, and there's very strong and reliable evolution of the chronograph as a mechanism in the line, which is very thorough. We manufacture everything in house, from the ultra thin to all the big complications. So it's just the same approach. And again, the fantastic thing, I always tell my colleagues that whenever they enter a store, they can always say and be proud and hold their head high, because you don't use a highly modified mechanism that you actually purchase, but everything in-house. So that's it will definitely set us up with very few other watch houses in Switzerland.
Great, thank you so much, Marc, and we'll head down to Lac Le Mans, down toward the mouth of the Rhone in Geneva, and move to Chopard and Po Infante. Po.
A beautiful day in Geneva, and of course it's a pleasure to be here to talk about the in-house chronograph of Chopard. Today I think it's an interesting day, especially for the US audience, because it's the first time that we show this timepiece, and it's in the Alpine Eagle collection called the Alpine Eagle Chrono XL. But before we show the product, I think it's important to understand where it comes from and who's designed it. So first, I'd like to share with you, of course, that Chopard, being a family-owned business, you'll be able to see here the 3 gents member of the family. You have Karl Friedrich Schäufele on the left, his father Karl Schäufele in the center, and his son Karl Fritz Schäufele on the right-hand side. And together, the 3 of them actually designed this timepiece. And they designed this timepiece from an existing icon that we already had in the collection. It's a timepiece that Karl Friedrich designed himself in 1980. And it's called the Saint Moritz. So some of you might remember that timepiece from that era. It was very successful at the time. And our timepiece looks very similar to what it did in the 80s. It's gotten definitely a facelift, and it looks a bit more modern, but I would say the key elements are still there. And even myself, I'm wearing one here today. So you can see here a picture of the watch that was redesigned. It was launched last year, not yet as a chrono version, which we'll talk about later, but as a 3-hand version in a 41mm case. And this was really Karl Fritz who was pushing to relaunch this timepiece. And so far in the first year, it has been extremely successful. So after a year now, we arrive with a chrono version, which is, I think, quite a stunning timepiece. And it's also bigger. We're talking about a 44mm diameter case. The first element I want to talk about in terms of design is maybe the dial, which is the element that a lot of people see at first when they look at a timepiece. And for us, it was inspired by the iris of the eagle, hence the name of the collection, the Alpine Eagle. And the iris of an eagle is a very powerful eye. It's the only animal that actually can look into the sun directly. And it was an inspiration for the design of our own dial here in the Alpine Eagle collection. We also use on the dial Super Luminova, which is very easy for the user to be able to see time at night. And the Super Luminova is everything on the hands, on the indexes, on the Roman numerals. And it's X1 grade Super Luminova, so it's about 60% brighter and longer lasting than the Super Luminova that we find normally in the industry. After this, I'd like to also talk about the seconds hand, the central seconds hand, which is inspired by the feather of the eagle. And you can see here a drawing of a powerful eagle feather. And actually, we've replicated an element at the base of the central second hand, which you can see there. Then I'd like to talk about the actual watch itself, the case, the bracelet. It's, you know, very multifaceted and very strong, very powerful. And we don't have to look very far here in Switzerland to get inspiration. We have these amazing alpine regions, the Alp mountains, which give us, you know, the stonework and the rock gives it a really powerful look. And that's what we were going for here in terms of design. Next, I'd like to talk about the case, which is a 3-part case, and the screws, which are fully functional screws. They're not decorative. They go through the entire watch. On top of everything, we've aligned them to the bezel. So that's an extra step for the person who's assembling the timepiece. But they are fully functional screws, and they really help with the water resistancy on top of the screw-down crown. So here we're talking about a timepiece that is 100 meters in terms of water resistancy. Next, I'd like to talk about the material, and it's the same for the 41 millimeter three-hand than for the chrono that we're going to look at. It's a new steel developed by Chopard, and it's a result of 4 years of research and development. And we have now this proprietary steel called the Chopard Lucent Steel A223, and the secret behind it is really that we've remelted it a second time. So by remelting it, we take a lot of the impurities away, and it gives us a very, very nice result. More scratch resistant, so we're able to achieve 223 Vickers in terms of the scratch test. The shine of it has a wider feel, a wider kind of shine, so it's very, you know, you can be proud to have it on the wrist. It's almost, I would say, 100% anti-allergenic, because we really reach the grade of surgical steel without the certification, of course, but the impurities have been removed, so it's very easy for the wearer to use. And the last point is that it's ethical steel. So we work with a supplier in Austria who uses a 70% recycled steel, and that goes along very well with our own kind of approach at Chopard to be sustainable. And I think that's quite important for the future generations to talk about this now. Finally, I'd like to show you the timepieces, actually. That's why we're here, right? So the 3 pieces that we're introducing in the US and around the world are the full steel with the blue LH dial, the full steel with the pitch black dial that you see on the right-hand side, and the two-tone, the bicolor steel and rose gold that you see at the base of the screen. And maybe one important element as well is that Chopard has its own gold foundry. So not only is the gold, the steel ethical, but the gold also, we have our own gold foundry. And so we source 100% ethical gold. So here's a nice kind of 360 view of the chrono. I'd like to look at the dial, because the dial is a very, I think, important part of the watch. In this case, we can see that it has also a tachymeter scale, something that is quite useful for those who love chronos. You'll also notice that the subdials are at 9 and at 3 o'clock are slightly higher than they would be when we look around other watches in the industry. And that's something that we've done in our chronos in general to make them a bit bigger. And I think it improves legibility for the user, because the subdials are able to be a bit larger. We use, of course, as I said, the Super Luminova on the hands and numerals, but there's also red Super Luminova for the chrono functions. And I think last but not least, it's important to talk about the movement, because that's why we're also here. Chopard, we have our own manufacture, so all the movements that you see in the Alpine Eagle collection are 100% in-house, and the chrono is not an exception. Actually, the chrono we launched for the first time in 2006. The 03 caliber was launched in 2006 for our Haute Horlogerie collection. And you know, we've used this now in other collections, but it's a fully in-house manufactured. All the R&D, everything is done in-house. So what can we say about this movement just by looking at the image? If we cover some of the basics, we're talking about a single barrel that holds 60 hours of power reserve. You probably get a bit more than that. It's chronometer certified, so it's COSC certified. I think that's also important to have an independent certification to tell you that your timepiece is an accurate timepiece. It's a fully integrated chrono, so it's not a modular chrono by any means, with a column wheel, also has a vertical clutch. So as we said before in the Blancpain presentation, when you start it, it has a very smooth start. And apart from that, it's not going to affect the timekeeping as if you were to use a non-vertical clutch. It has a flyback function as well. So that's, as we were saying before, for the pilots and aficionados out there, this has a flyback function as well. It has a stop seconds function. So when you pull the crown, the small seconds will stop. The tachymeter scale we spoke about, and we have 3 patents on this movement that we registered back in 2006. One for the activation of the chrono using that vertical clutch. One for the reset function, because it has 3 supple hammers that give it a very smooth reset function, and it's a very precise reset function. And the last patent has to do with the winding system. It's a bidirectional winding, very efficient winding system, which means the wearer will not have to manually wind the watch very often if he doesn't wear it very often. And then in terms of pricing, to talk about pricing, the steel version in the US comes in at, $19,200 US, so under 20,000. And the bicolor version, the two-tone version, is at 26,800. And this can be found in our own boutiques and authorized retailers.
Paul, I have one question,
Yes.
which is the bicolor version. You know, years and years ago, we used to see lots of watches that were a mixture of steel and gold. Then they disappeared. And do we have a trend now that's coming back, bicolor?
Yeah, I think so. You know, we also base what we produce on customers. You know, we listen to our customers very carefully. Being a family-owned business, we have very close relationships with our customers, and yeah, we've gotten a lot of demands for two-tone. But Chopard has been making two-tone for quite some time, whether it be in the Happy Sport collection or in the Mille Miglia collection, and now in the Alpine Eagle collection. So it's nothing new, and the fact that we have this gold foundry in-house gives us that flexibility to do that. So last but not least, maybe just as a teaser, we would like to show you, because the Mille Miglia is actually happening this weekend. And for those of you who know about it, it's a classic car race happening in Italy. Here you can see the map. It goes from Brescia all the way down to Rome and back. And each year we make a race edition. And the race edition that we made this year will appear next on the screen, is a full black 42.5 millimeter chrono. And it's limited to 1,000 pieces and will also be available in our US boutiques and authorized retailers.
That provokes one other question. When you showed us the Alpine Eagle chrono, you showed everything on a bracelet, and I see the rubber strap on the Mille Miglia. Are you going to be producing a strap type version of the watch?
That's a tough question, Jeffrey. I cannot answer that yet, but of course the idea is that Alpine Eagle, for us, it's going to become an icon. We're going to keep producing this timepiece in various different complications, so of course we'll just have to wait and see.
Okay, great. Bo, is there another part of your presentation, or do we move on to Tony?
No, that's it for us. Thank you very much, and I'm sorry if we took a bit more time.
No, everything is. I think we're well on schedule, and so now we're going to move to Germany and Tony de Haas. Tony.
Thank you very much, Jeff. Thank you very much for having me, and I will just jump and share my screen, and we jump right away in a PowerPoint presentation where I will be presenting about chronographs and Lange and Söhne. I think that's an interesting history. But first, a little bit about this year. 175 years ago, the company founder Ferdinand Adolf Lange, he came to the little village 20 kilometers south of Dresden to start up watchmaking over there. It was a very poor ex-minery region, and the mines were empty, so the people were very poor. But after chatting with the government, they will allow him to spend him some money to set up his company. So that was 175 years ago. And we celebrate this, of course, with a series of watches, 3 watches. We have the 1815, which is actually the year of birth of Ferdinand Adolf Lange. The 1815 Thin in honey gold, our own alloy, which is 18 karat gold, but has twice the hardness as regular gold. And then we have the 1815 rattrapante honey gold, which I'm going to speak a little bit more about later on. And then the huge complication, the turbograph perpetual, the honey gold version. It has a tourbillon, it has a fusion chain mechanism, and it has a rattrapante chronograph and a perpetual calendar. So we stay today, 1815 rattrapante honey gold. It has a new caliber. It is a very classical chronograph. Later in my presentation, I will explain what I mean with this. It's a limited edition for 100 pieces in our honey gold. It is a 365 part movement. And like I said before, it has a very classical approach. What I mean by this is a very classical rattrapante chronograph. So there is no isolating systems, no instantaneously jumping minute counters, and no flyback. I come back to that later on. So a very classical watch. The diameter is 41.2 and the thickness is 12.6 millimeters, which is quite cool for a mechanical manual wound rattrapante chronograph. Power reserve is 58 hours. Here you see a little bit an outtake of the back of the movement. It has a special decoration, a frosted decoration, of course, with the beveling, the anglage. You see a lot of inner angles, and you recognize on the south of the image where is the hand engraving. And for the ones who know us a little bit better, they can recognize, hey, this is a bit different than we used to regularly. Yes, this is a part of the anniversary collection. So we did a thinner hand engraving, and we did a black rhodium plating in the basing of that, and later on we did the frosting over it to appear the German silver. The Swiss, they call it Major. It's the German silver alloy of which all our movements are made. So let's jump into the chronology of our chronographs. It all started in 1999, at least concerning chronographs. The rebirth of Lange was a couple of years before. It was in 1990 when Walter Lange, the great-grandson of Ferdinand Adolf Lange, and a great industry visionary like the late Mr. Günther Blümlein founded the company again. They worked 4 years to develop their first new calibers, which they launched in 1994. They didn't know where to land. To be honest, a lot of people out of the industry said, Mr. Blümlein, are you sure you want to make luxury watches in the former Eastern Germany? That country where they drive that little cardboard car like Trabant and stand in line for oranges at the grocery shop? Do they know luxury? And they began their adventure, and it was quite a success story. And success stories, yeah, they inspire to continue. And it was in 1999 that the world was, I think, surprised that these Germans, not Swiss made, these Germans were about to make a chronograph, the datograph, which is quite simple. It's a chronograph with our famous outsized date. It shocked the industry, as I've heard later on, by the beauty of this movement. What does it do? It is a very classical chronograph, so no vertical clutch, it's horizontal clutch. So the user or the owner who is buying our pieces, they go for fascination mechanics. And that's all you can see. As soon as you push the pushers, and if you take a look at the same time with the eyeglass at the movement, you see really what is happening. You can see everything. And of course, all the parts, even the ones you normally don't see, are hand decorated. So, of course, this chronograph, as marked on the dial, it has a flyback system, which has been very well explained before by my dear colleagues. And on top of it, there was a little bit of a, let's call it an innovation, not just a flyback, but for the first time, it was a flyback in combination with an instantaneously jumping minute counter. Whoa, what does that mean? In fact, on the watch, you see that on the right-hand side, where the number 30 is normally in rest. The little hand is stopped at 30. You start the chronograph. After 1 minute, the minute counter normally, in a classical way, there are 3 ways to pass the minute counter. It is very sliding one. It is the one who is continuously running. Then you have the gently sliding one. It needs a couple of seconds to switch, but in our watches, we have the instantaneously jumping minute counter. So as soon as the stop second hand passes the 12, it jumps immediately. It's made by a technical feature, which we call it the moment of drop. So there's a snail-shaped wheel, and when the moment comes, the lever drops down, and you have an instantaneously jumping minute counter. That was the beginning of a real adventure at Lange & Söhne, I think, in 1999. Then we continued. In 2004, we launched 2 watches. In fact, the 1815 chronograph was in fact based on the datograph without date. Slightly thinner, so better for some smaller wrists. But it has all the features further as in the datograph. So instantaneously minute counter and the flyback. The double split was quite an amazing piece. We all know rattrapante. Rattrapante chronographs allows you to do split time measurement within 1 minute. And we thought that Lange, why only within 1 minute? Wouldn't it be possible to do it over maybe 30 minutes? That was the first watch, 2004. Not only a rattrapante hand on the stop seconds, but also, if you take a close look, on the minute counter, you see 2 hands. So you can take measurements, for example, of 2 racing cars who are on the racetrack within 30 minutes. You can save the first time of the first car when it passes the finish, and after a couple of seconds later, the second car, then you stop the chronograph, and the time measured of both cars are displayed on the dial. Then we had the turbograph polymeride. The turbograph polymeride was the first tourbillon chronograph rattrapante, and this time the classical one. So it doesn't have the isolating system which you may find on the double split. On the double split we had to make, because the double split from 2004, there's of course the instantaneously jumping minute count and the flyback. So you have a double rattrapante with instantaneously minute counters, there are 2, and the flyback. The turbograph doesn't have all this because it's already heavy loaded by the very fine polymeride, what stands at Lange & Söhne for the fusion chain mechanism, which provides for constant force on the movement during the whole winding system. And Lange & Söhne was the first in 1994. That was the simple version without chronograph rattrapante to do this in a wristwatch. Before that, it only was known in DAC watches or in clocks or pocket watches. In 2006, the story continued. The datograph perpetual. It was a perpetual calendar included in the famous datograph movement. So you have, again, the features of the datograph. I will not repeat it, otherwise you're getting bored and I see heads falling asleep, and that's not the idea of this presentation. There is a feature which is very interesting. It's a patented feature. Since watches like this, datograph perpetual, are delivered with a folding buckle, what happens with clients? They put your watch on the side. You see on the left side at the 10 o'clock position, the pusher. The pusher is for adjusting the perpetual calendar. So all the indications of the perpetual calendar, if you push, they all advance by 1 day. Of course, we have the integrated pushers for doing the adjustment after not wearing the watch for a long time. But what is the system? The risk is that you, in accident, you put your watch on the side, coincidentally, your pusher is activated, and without knowing, you switch the date 1 day ahead. And that is, of course, not the idea. So what did we do? We did the interlocking stop system. And what does it do? Nothing more that you only need to pull the crown in the first position to activate the pusher on the 10 o'clock position. So if you just normally wind or normally wear your watch with the crown in the 0 position, as we call it, you can push the button whatever you want, but nothing happens. Then 2012, quite a period after the 1999 datograph, we gave her an update. They were the first datograph had 36 hours of power reserve. The new generation Datograph has 60 hours of power reserve. It has also a power reserve indication at the 6 o'clock position. And further, the beauty of the movement, the instantaneously jumping minute count and the flyback, of course, kept in place. Never change a winning team. In 2013, that was quite a bombastic year. First, we had the 1815 Rattrapante perpetual calendar used. That's the watch on the left. That was in platinum. That is a Rattrapante, a classical Rattrapante chronograph. So it has nothing to do with double split. The classical Rattrapante chronograph with a perpetual calendar. And to the right, the pink gold one was one of 6 watches, the Grand Complications. The Grand Complication was our most crazy watch we ever developed. We worked 7 years on the development. What does it do? It's a very rare combination for a Grand Complication. It has a Grande Sonnerie, it has a Petite Sonnerie, it has a minute repeater, it has a perpetual calendar, it has a mono pusher chronograph, so one pusher on the left between 1 and 2 o'clock, and it's for start, stop, 0. The pusher between the 10 and 11 o'clock, that is the Rattrapante. There's another feature at the 6 o'clock position. You see the foudroyante, the flying second, which cuts the seconds in fifths of a second. So it's quite a crazy piece. If you start your chronograph, you see at the 6 o'clock position like a kind of a crazy windmill hacking these seconds. And if you stop, it indicates in which part of a second you stop the watch. The Grande Sonnerie is, I try to explain, it's a self-striking watch. So it has 2 hammers, the lower pitch for the hours, the higher pitch for the minutes, and the double tone is for the quarters. You only need the minutes, of course, with a minute repeater, because the Grande Sonnerie is striking on itself. There are 2 switches on the watch. Of course, you can switch it off if you don't want to have the noise. And you can switch it also from Grand Sonnerie to Petite Sonnerie. Grand Sonnerie is what I call the full package. It's every hour. You hear the amount of hours without touching. So you wear a watch and suddenly it starts, let's call it talking to you. That's okay for the hours. The first quarter, you hear the amount of hours, low pitch gong, and the amount of quarters, ding dong, 1 quarter. And half, it's double. So you have the hours and the double tone twice. The Petite Sonnerie is a reduced package. It only strikes the amount of hours at the whole hour. And the quarters, you only hear the ding dongs. So that was a mouthful. The thing continued. The Tubergraph perpetual. We topped even the Tubergraph Poulet-Merite. The Rattrapante chronograph with fusion chain, and Tourbillon had now an integrated perpetual calendar. Then the year after, we had the Datograph perpetual tourbillon. So it's the Datograph perpetual tourbillon. We redid the movement. It was completely new, and we had to integrate the tourbillon. Further, we have between the 9 and the 10 o'clock position in the tachymeter scale, we have very discrete the power reserve indicator. And this is also an instantaneously jumping perpetual calendar. So which means every night, all the indications jump instantaneously, even from 28th of February to the 3rd of March. Then coming back, 2004, double split. It was a huge success. In the beginning, we had troubles to communicate the complexity of the watch. But once you know and you give simple examples what you can measure, it was a bummer. But the thing continued. And in 2018, 14 years later, we did a triple split. Yeah, it sounds logic. You do the double split and you do triple split. I don't know if we're going to do a quadruple split or something like that. But what does it? We extended the measurement, the Rattrapante, not only between 1 minute, in 1 minute, so stop seconds, double, not only the minute counters, but also 2 hour counters. So you can measure 2 marathon men, for example, you start the chronograph when the marathon is starting. And after, let's go 3 hours, 10 minutes and 50 seconds, the first guy crosses the finish, you push the button on the 10 o'clock position. That, the blue hands mark that exactly time. The rest of the chronograph continues to run. And let's go 15 minutes later, the second one crosses the finish. Then you stop the chronograph. And then you have the 2 indications marked. That is an absolute crazy timepiece. Maybe I can show you something more. Okay, the last piece I have in this chart is the one I already spoke. So we jump on to the next one. There you go. So on the 12 o'clock position, you have the double hour counters. Then you have the double minute counters, and you have the double minute count, the second counter, the split seconds, and the power reserve. The power reserve of this watch is 55 hours. It has, again, the instantaneously jumping minute counter. It has the flyback system all on top. And here you have a look what happens on a level of watchmaking, because there are some isolating wheels. This is the isolating system for the rattrapante, for the second, for the minute counter. And you have here the chronograph, immediate bridge for switching. You have wheel 1 of the 2 column wheels. So you see there is a lot of layers to build for a watchmaker. So that was very short, my presentation. Thank you very much for listening and looking.
Tony, that was fantastic. We have, I understand, a lot of questions that have come in. And so I'd like to turn it over to Minda, who has been fielding all the questions.
Yes, hi everybody. So I have a question from Justin, and this is for all 3 brands. He says, for all 3 chrono makers, thank you so much for this amazing presentation. I have a question. When you wear a chronograph watch, do you use the chrono for anything in everyday life? If so,
That's a
what?
great question, and I will come in at the very end with my own experience. But
okay,
let's start with Marc, and we'll go right down the line.
I've got to unmute myself. Yeah, but I use my chronograph, when I make eggs or when I do different things. No, you don't use it as much as you used to in the past. But I do. It's a feature. It's a beautiful. I have an approach which is as a watchmaker, I very much respect the creativity and the mechanism. But I do happen sometimes to use my chronograph when I drive to the valley or things of that matter. So yes, I use the chronograph. But I mean, today the answer to this question is how many complications created in the past are used for the same reason today. Our appreciation and love for this industry is really the ability to create these complication in the dimension that today's technology enabled us to do. That's what my answer would be to.
Paul, what is your answer?
Well, he took my egg example away, so I'm gonna say, yeah, driving. I try to compare my driving time to on my GPS, such as Waze, something like this, and then I'll activate my chrono and see if at the end. But yeah, for eggs as well, it's a very good example. You want to cook a hard-boiled egg, it's important to have a chronograph handy.
Tony?
I'm a griller, barbecuer. And if you have to make if you have friends over, you have to make a whole bunch of steaks, and you want to have them well done or not, the triple split is the watch to go. But after all, my 2 colleagues also very well explained, and it's above all, we are just little boys who like to play with the watches, what you have on your wrist. That's the same feature you have automatically wound watches. We also have at Lange & Söhne, but we also have manually wound watches. And manually wound watches gives you the opportunity to have your home ritual every morning to wind your watch and play with your precious thing. And it's wonderful. You know, I know a guy who has a double split who wears it upside down because he's so fascinated. He has an eyeglass with him. He's so fascinated with the mechanism. So that's cool. So he can't read measurement of time. But he says, I have my cell phone for this. So it is all about fascination of mechanisms. But the fun thing is, I use, in fact, of course, the little boy who's playing with his toy, I use it when I do grilling and so on, and doing like stuff like I do not look like a runner or a marathon man, and I'm not. So that's what I use for. So I'm a griller kind of guy.
Well, if it's cooking, I'm risotto. I think it's great for risotto. But also, I have to say, I love playing with it. And there'll be many times a day wearing a chronograph, where I just push the button because it's fun to push and let your watch do its thing. I mean, it's just fascination with mechanics.
So going off of that question, this is also for all three, but I think I'll direct this to Poe. Wow, this is a really technical presentation, Michael says. Is it really that difficult to produce a new chronograph movement? Why?
Yeah, I think as it was explained earlier in the previous presentations, a lot of watchmakers, they compare the complexity of a chrono, you know, to a grand complication. It's much more difficult to produce a fully in-house chrono and not a modular one, a fully integrated, than it would be many other complications. So I think it takes a certain dedication from the brand, you know, that they want to do this, because it's a lot of time, it's a lot of money, it's a lot of resources, and of course any real manufacturer should definitely have its own fully integrated chronograph movement in its collection.
Poe, you raised something that I think is very important that all three of you should have mentioned, which is that all of the chronographs we've talked about today are fully integrated, meaning the chronograph is central to the watch and not a layer that's been added on top of a running movement. And there are a couple of high prestige brands that do the sandwich approach, which can never be as good. But all of these are fully integrated, which is a much harder movement to create and build. Good point.
So I have quite a few questions for Tony, actually. So these are from Encore, Anselm, Paul W, and I'm going to give them all to you at once because they're all related. Hi, Anthony. In one of the SIHH, ALS had a huge triple split model watch on display at the booth. Could you please tell the story behind making this huge watch? Also, Tony, how long does it take to build the triple split? Also, Tony, are the minutes and hour counters and the triple split instantaneous change? I know that's a lot. You don't have to tackle that all at once.
No, it's easy. It's easy. The big watch, that is I think it was in 2011 that we first time on the SIJ started a kind of what became a tradition. You know, we are quite down to earth. I think we at the SIH, I think we do talk about what we do. And we do watchmaking. We are watchmakers. And it was a fun thing. And it was, in fact, when Lange launched in 1999 in Basel still, the data graph, they had made a scale model like this. It didn't work, but it was a showcase model. And everybody was, wow, heavily impressed. And that inspired us to say, oh, can we make it like if you enter the booth, you have a huge watch. And then when we launched the triple split, we did launch, but we did make that big watch. Until there, we'd never made movements in that size because it's hardly to do. And for that watch, it has such a special movement, so many layers. We took the challenge. The marketing team, in fact, took the challenge, and they worked almost a year to produce it because it's already very challenging to have a kind of a perlage in this size. And having the parts without, in fact, it was, I think the weight of that watch is 2.5 tons. So they had to reinforce the floor of the Polexpo in Geneva to put it down. The second question, I think it was how long a watchmaker needs to assemble the triple split. When the watchmaker gets the parts, they're they are finalized or finished 90%. And then he starts the assembly and adjustment, and it's not. And finally, in French, you would call it montage en blanc. It's the first assembly. So the watch is working, it's ticking, it's tested, and then after that, he takes it apart again, because during assembly and adjustment, cutting away a little bit, adjustment, giving more force to the levers or the springs, or a little bit less, cutting away a little bit. Although we are very precise with our tolerances, the movement designer behind the 3D screen, on the 3D screen, it always work, but in real life, if you get in this case the 560 pieces on your table, they are all finalized, and every piece had its different tolerances. So the watchmaker has to adjust a lot of things. So I think you would take it out when the pieces are on the table, ready and decorated, partly. Then he would take about 3 weeks to assemble, and then he disassembles again, cleans, and assembles again, and do the final lubrication and adjustment. I think you're talking about 4 weeks. It could be 4 weeks, sometimes it's 5 weeks, and sometimes it's 3.5 weeks. That depends a little bit. It's hand craftsmanship, it's hand built, no machines. The last question, if the minute counter is the minute counters in the triple split, because there are two, they are instantaneously jumping. The hour counters, we have chosen not to do so, because they are gently going with you. So during measurement, you always can see where you are in if you are in the first hour, third hour, sixth hour, or seventh hour. That is more easier to see. We have been thinking about making it instantaneously, but then it always stays on the last hour, and it doesn't show you where in between the hours are. You are. It's at the glance, it's better readability. So we've chosen to do the direct empowerment of the. So it's sliding with the. So we good?
No, you're good. You got them all. Okay. So we're getting a lot of funny comments. Paul W says he likes to use the triple split to time work conference calls that involve 2 clients. Roland likes to use the chronograph to time his hiking trips. And Jordan likes to use the chronograph for brewing coffee. That's hilarious. Blancpain. Or will we see more, sorry for my pronunciation, bathyscaphe chronograph flybacks following the intrigue in the latest green model? I don't know if you can answer that.
I believe so, yes. I think that we have a fantastic movement, and I think that the bathyscaphe has been extremely well received, taking a big part of the 50 fathom collection of the cells around the world. And there's no doubt that we're going to explore most likely different material, but also different aesthetic and finishes. Yes. Like what I said, I guess, huh?
Okay. That wasn't my dog barking. I don't know where that noise came
from. Okay.
Minda, do we have any more
Minda,
questions?
you're mute.
That was our collector, Gary. Let me see if he's here to ask this question live. Sorry, I was on mute, everybody. I'm getting so many texts, emails, and chats. I'm trying to balance it all. So Gary is not here, but he says, the speakers noted vertical and horizontal clutches. What are the advantages and disadvantages of each design? Do you want to start with that, anybody?
I go forward, definitely. I mean, our first vertical clutch was in 1985. I mean, it's just it improved the fact that whenever you start the mechanism of the chronograph, you don't have any shaking of the hands. That is the instant, like a carve, a clutch of a car. It's a different two surface. It was designed originally, the first version of a vertical clutch. You actually had 2 wheels, and the wheel on top had little teeth on the bottom of it, and then the wheel on the bottom had a little plastic cover of it. So the teeth would actually get into the soft material of a lower wheel. So obviously it's been greatly improved. Now we use 2, mirror polish finish wheels, and you have an instant chronograph. Also, the beauty of it is that if a lot of people who have a regular chronograph, a horizontal chronograph, a clutch chronograph, what you have is that they are told not to use that chronograph feature at all time because it actually weakens the mechanism. It's taking a lot of energy to run it. That is not the case with the vertical clutch chronograph. And that is really, I think, the two major features why the vertical, clutch chronograph is so attractive.
Yeah, if I can add just one other little technical detail. In general, with a horizontal clutch, you need to have a spring to tension the moving of the seconds hand so that it doesn't jiggle. They call that a frottement. And by putting tension on it, then it will move in an even way. But that putting the tension on with a spring adds a drag and therefore consumes energy and changes the amplitude of the watch, which is a factor as well.
So I have a question for Chopard from Sumeji. He's asking if we can expect a chronograph in the L.U.C line. And I will follow that with Lightspire, and you can also take this one, Po. What do you think is the next innovation of the mechanical chronograph complication from a functional standpoint? You guys can all go for that one. Great question, Lightspire.
Yeah, very good question. The first one is the easy one. The first one is that the L.U.C chrono already exists. So this is, I would say, the haute horlogerie version with a gold central rotor, small seconds reset. There's a lot of other functions, but the L.U.C chrono already exists. It was launched in 2006 for the first time, and I think now we're up to the third version. But yeah, definitely it's already in existence, and that's where we based our 03 caliber for the Alpine Eagle from. So that's the first one. And the second one, if I understand the question correctly, I would say that, well, there's a lot to do also with different materials, right? So chronographs have been around for quite some time now, and some brands have already chosen to use certain materials, more futuristic materials, I would say, instead of traditional materials to explore new avenues. And yeah, I think that could be something interesting.
Does anyone else, the question, what do you think is the next innovation of the mechanical chronograph complication from a functional standpoint?
Since I'm never talking about futuristic projects of Lange, I have difficulties to give an honest answer on this question. Let us surprise you.
And Tony, we do have a lot of questions about the Odysseus series, but they're all future questions. So just
really?
Just
future questions?
Yeah, future questions, more sports-focused chronograph, etc. So we'll all look forward to those answers.
Let us surprise you. We do our best.
Can you?
Do we have time for? Do we have time? One more question.
I have one more for all three panelists, and this is a really interesting one. This comes from Robert in Connecticut. He said, "Thank you so much for all three of you. I'm curious, what separates a luxury chronograph buyer from a more mass market consumer?"
Can you ask the question again, please?
What separates a luxury chronograph buyer from a more mass market consumer? That's a tough one.
I would prefer to show a picture of our movements then. I think it's the way how the movement is built and decorated also by hand, but also you have chronograph levers which you can do by stamping. So it's very thin and flat pieces. It's done by a machine. And you have more the three-dimensional kind of levers, which are not possible to make by stamping machine, so and further, I think like we do at Lange, it's a very classical approach. We are the ones today who do the horizontal clutch or the horizontal chronographs. It's a very classical approach. And I think it's good ways to cope with that. If you have a proper movement design and you have the right angle in which the intermediate wheel comes into the chronograph wheel, it's all about the angle. You can play a lot with adjustment and without losing too much energy when the chronograph is running from your movement, because that is, before we spoke, that's a very underestimated complication in chronograph, because once starting a chronograph, you start the interaction of a whole separate mechanism, which also had to be pulled by the regular barrel and the escapement. Since we are still talking timekeeping here, and not when the chronograph starts, the amplitude should drop down dramatically, then you're not talking about timekeeping anymore. But it's all doable by adjustments. I hope I gave a little bit an answer in the direction.
Yes,
For
thank
us, Lange, it is all pure handcraftsmanship, and I think you could see that not one movement is the same.
If I may say for Blancpain, I think it's to, you have different collectors who are looking for different things and a different price point. And I think for Blancpain, at our level, it is reliability, it is creativity, is using today's technology, tradition, innovation, and to bring some of the past to improve it and to have a price point that enables us to have a very reliable and aesthetic mechanism that we can use in different part of the families, whether it's ladies' watches, men's watches, classical pieces, or in the marine environment. So, and I think those are the important things. And for us, for the future, I think that we have now a fantastic, reliable, beautiful movement, and that we are going to mix it, I guess, with maybe other complications as we have done in the past, perpetual calendar, chronograph, and other pieces. So I think, again, it all depends exactly what the customer is looking for.
And if I may add one more thing, I think which is quite important when we talk about, and for the three brands that are here present today, I think we're all on the same level, is exclusivity, the amount of pieces that you put into the market. So that again makes a big difference when you talk about a big commercial production and something which is handmade, different approach. So here we're talking tens, maybe hundreds, but certainly not thousands of chronographs produced per year. So that I think makes a big difference as well.
If I can add for all three, when you look at mass-produced chronographs, you turn the watch over and you don't see the kind of beautiful finishes that all three, Blancpain, Chopard, and Lange have. And in some cases, you see no finishing at all because it's all been covered in PVD or some other material to kind of hide the absence of it and so forth. And this extends not only to the movement, but case, the hands, all of the details of a great watch. And we all rejoice in that. And that's the beauty of really fine watchmaking as opposed to mass market watches.
Well, the chat is just exploding everywhere. I don't know if we're going to get to all of these questions, but everyone is saying thank you so much. Frederick Hill says, these little works of art are marvelous to watch. Do what they do. Your three brands have the best of these artisans, and everyone is complimenting on your presentations. So thank you all so much. I think we're not going to get to all of these questions. If collectors, you want to email them to me, we'll make sure to pass them along to the brands.
And thank you, Marc. Thank you, Tony. Thank you, Poe. It's been a real pleasure this morning.
Thank you very much, Jeff.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you very much, team WatchTime. And it was great fun for me.
Great, thank you,
nice
Tony.
to meet my colleagues at Chopard and Blancpain.
Very good.
And,
likewise.
I had one chat question. The question was if we, the three of us, could each of us pronounce the company, the brand name. That's a funny question.
Well, for our American audience, yes, if you could please, for us American, these watch names are quite difficult. I think that's a cute question.
A. Lange und Söhne.
One more time.
Lange und Söhne. A. Lange und Söhne.
Blancpain.
One more time, Marc.
Blancpain.
and Chopard.
Well, we all speak French and German now, don't we, guys?
We do.
We do. And
Bien
yes,
sûr.
merci. Will the recording be available? Yes, everyone, we will email you a copy of the recording this evening. So thank you all so much.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Marc.
Thank you very much.
Bye, Jeff. Stay
Bye-bye.
healthy. Stay safe.
Bye.